Celtic, what did we learn from Clubs AGM? By Thomas Duncan, BBC Scotland. At Celtic Park, Celtic chairman Ian Bankier was on the end of criticism from supporters. The scene was set at Celtic's annual general meeting when only the respective men's and women's team managers, Ange Postecoglou and Fran Alonso, received warm applause upon their introduction. Sarcastic laughter then greeted the announced absence of main shareholder Dermot Desmond, represented by his son Ross, as the club's executives began to reflect on a troubled last 12 months on and off the pitch. There was plenty of fan unrest and anger at the club's board, so what did we learn from the 2-hour meeting? Last season still stings. It was bound to be a difficult 2 hours for the Celtic board on the back of the club's first trophyless season since 2010. After all, winning the league was practically all that mattered, given it would have brought up an historic 10th straight title. Instead, they finished 25 points adrift of Rangers, failed to reach even the semi-finals of the domestic cup competitions, and crashed out of the Champions League qualifiers before finishing bottom of their Europa League group. In the first of a series of videos shown to shareholders, Chairman Ian Bankier admitted it was hard to see the positives from the campaign and said the board are accountable for how it played out. The Celtic chair also bemoaned the worst rub of the green that you could possibly imagine in reference to COVID and injury issues. Celtic had 2 games postponed in August last year when defender Boli Bolingoli breached quarantine rules by going to Spain, while Aberdeen were forced to delay 3 matches when 8 of their players visited a bar, with 2 contracting COVID. In January, Celtic were forced to play second-string teams in 2 games after a COVID outbreak in the squad on a training camp in Dubai. Asked if the club had been treated fairly by the authorities, Bankier replied, "We were astonishingly treated by the Scottish government. We were the only employer in Scotland to be given sanctions for an employee breaching rules." Meanwhile, Finance Director Chris Mackay said players had been kept rather than sold with the importance of the season in mind, which ultimately, along with no fans being allowed inside Celtic Park due to COVID, led to the club's first loss for 5 years. However, Bankier and interim chief executive Michael Nicholson pointed out the year ahead looks much more positive with fans back, and stressed that one bad season does not mean the club is broken, as the latter put it. Don't mention Mackay. If someone had been dropped into the Celtic AGM with no prior knowledge of Scottish football, they would have emerged from it not knowing. Dominic Mackay took up the post of chief executive at the club in June. The former Scottish rugby chief operating officer was in place for just 3 months before resigning in September for personal reasons. No further explanation was given, nor any questions asked about the circumstances of his departure, though Bankier did instead take the opportunity to thank long-serving CEO Peter Lawwell, who Mackay replaced. He paid tribute to Lawwell's service and said he was instrumental in the appointment of Postecoglou before stepping down. Board under fire. It was a chastening few hours for the board, and Bankier in particular. Fans' frustrations were made clear at Celtic Park when those in the room voted overwhelmingly against the re-elections of Bankier and non-executive director Brian Wilson to the board, while plenty voted against Desmond's reinstatement too. Bankier's point throughout was stability on the board brings consistency to the club. But the Celtic Trust put forward a resolution asking that the board be refreshed, as their representative questioned whether long-serving independent directors were re-scrutinizing the work of the executive team enough. In short, they were accused of being out of touch. It was put to the top table that the gulf between Celtic fans and the board was as big as it had ever been. The touch paper issue on this was the mooted appointment of former Police Scotland Assistant Chief Constable Bernard Higgins to a senior security role at the. Many fans object to his appointment, having been a part of the enforcement of the now repealed and deeply unpopular Offensive Behaviour at Football Act. After being asked directly, Bankier pointedly refused to give assurances the club would not appoint Higgins, to boos and a cry of "shameful" in the room. European record looms large. Despite incredible domestic success in the last decade, fans were critical of the club's performances in Europe. One pointed out the club last won a European knockout, excluding qualifiers, in 2004. When pressed about the lack of Champions League football, Bankier replied that Celtic took pastings from Paris Saint-Germain and Bayern Munich the last. Timothy were there, and cited the gulf in resources in European football. Fans responded that Celtic had been eliminated in qualifiers by Maribor, AEK Athens, Cluj, Ferencvaros, and Midtjylland, all clubs with fewer resources. Interim CEO Nicholson also responded to criticism of the club's recruitment and scouting setup, saying these aspects are a priority for moving forwards. Bankier also pointed to the haul of domestic trophies in recent times, including a quadruple treble, and added the fundamentals of the club are better now than they were 15 years ago. Ange is the man. Amid all the frustration and rancor between fans and board, the clear positive for the Celtic supporters in the room was Postecoglou. Plenty of fans who asked questions started by praising the Australian's job so far. "Thanks for giving us our team back," one said. Postecoglou himself was silent throughout, though an interview with him by club media was played out, in which he spoke of his affection for Celtic already. More pointedly, he talked about putting together the football department and said he is methodical in his approach, adding there won't be quick solutions. Amid the ongoing absence of a head of recruitment and sporting director. Crucially, with Celtic 4 points behind Rangers in the Scottish Premiership, he talked of filling gaps in the squad, and Bankier and Nicholson confirmed there would be investment in January window for the right targets as well as support for the revamp of the football department. Report.